Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to see all of you in this webinar. It is part of the Apparently series by Grander Together. So, who's Grander Together? Well, Grander Together has organized these seminars because we are an organization that's focused on strengthening intergenerational bonds with a focus on positive grandparenting and helping families inculcate and maintain strong family values. So this apparently webinar is a series of panel discussions between people across generations and bringing their professional or personal perspectives to help strengthen such families. Tonight we have featured two speakers. First of all, we have Matthew Au. Matthew is a restorative practice trainer with LCCS, and he works with inmates, counsellors, social workers, educators, and families, and drawing from lived experience and frontline work. He's passionate about helping people build safer relationships, navigate difficult emotions, and create spaces where dignity and healing can take root. So Matthew was speaking from the professional perspective, and from a family perspective, we have Ma Sin Sin. Sin Sin is a wife, mother, and the grandmother, and she attended the Restorative Practices course taught by Matthew in the past, and she has been applying these techniques with her family and friends. So tonight she will also share how restorative conversations have helped her restore and strengthen interpersonal relationships. But first off, I'll hand it over to Matthew. And for our participants, if you have questions that you'd like to ask either Matthew or Sin, you may type it in the Q&A box. So I will continue to look at the Q&A box, and then after Matthew and Sin have presented, I will address some of these questions that you, the participants, have raised. So, Matthew, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Shanton, and hello, everyone. So before I start, let me just share my screen because I'll be sharing some slides and share. Okay, just let me know if the screen is on. Is it on? Okay, so now I will share the full screen. Is this the first slide?
Yes, you're at first slide now.
Okay, so hello everyone again. Good evening, and really thank you, Shanton, for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit more about restorative practice and what I do, my work. And also thank you everyone for making time tonight to attend this webinar. I know it's 8 o'clock. Thank you all for being here. And my name is Matthew, and as Shanton has mentioned, I work in a social service agency called LCCS. It stands for Lutheran Community Services. So what we do most is this social science approach called restorative practice. And in a nutshell, what it does is we help people learn to build relationships, strengthen existing relationships, and also address harm when harm is caused. Because as you can imagine, this RP thing is very relevant to our everyday lives because we experience conflict on an everyday basis at work, with friends, and especially with our family members, right? So actually tonight, what we want to do, or what I would want to focus on, is actually the conflicts with family members and how we usually respond to them and how we can respond better to conflicts with our family members in the future. Yeah. So this is in glance, the things that we will be touching on for the next 20 minutes. It's basically three areas. We would learn to reframe how we look at conflict, learn how we can respond, how we respond to conflict, and also how to use this thing called restorative language to deal with conflicts. Firstly, I'd like to just draw everyone's attention by sharing a little bit more about how my journey is with reframing conflicts. So I'm not sure how many of you are grandparents here. I'm going to share a little bit of how I had conflicts with my grandparents in the past and how I managed to look at it from a different lens. So the story begins in 2014. I freshly graduated from university, and I had this grand idea of living in Hong Kong with my grandparents, whom I have never lived with all my life. So I live in Singapore, and they're from Hong Kong, right? So I went back to Hong Kong and I lived with them, wanted to spend time with them and take care of them, stuff like that. That was the ideal plan, right? But for those of you who are grandparents, okay, you probably are laughing now because, haha, so funny, right? The thought of grandchildren taking care of grandparents. The truth is, the grandparents have another grown-up child to take care of. So the first few months went on relatively well. Everyone was on their best behavior, like very compromising and stuff like that. But slowly, the conflicts start to creep in, right? My grandparents started to be annoyed by things like me forgetting to switch the water heater switch off after I shower, that I take too long in the toilet, like they start to grumble. And on my end, like I also start to, like make noise about. So my grandfather especially has this habit of turning the aircon off during summer. So every time, like in the middle of the night, I'll be like, oh, why am I sweating? Why am I sweating? Right? Just to realize that he turned the fan and the aircon off because to save electricity. So this and that lah, okay. But I think the real conflict came when there was one time my grandmother ironed a shirt of mine and spoiled the shirt. So I raised my voice at her, and then she raised her voice back. And at that point of time, I was really shocked because wow, I was 33 years old and my grandmother has never raised her voice at me before. And honestly, I didn't know what to do. I was like, okay, if I shout at my parents, yeah, like I know how to deal with it, right? But grandparents, how do you deal with it? And at that point of time, maybe what upset me most and what affected me most was the fact that I felt that we had a perfect relationship before this because we never shout at each other. And now something is spoiled, right? Something precious is damaged. How to mend it then? Um, I probably would have used a different method with my parents, but somehow because of my grandmother's love for me, I took the courage to, you know, just have a chat with her one day to share with her why I was so upset, like that this shirt in particular was, damaged, and told her how I felt, not knowing how she would respond, right? But to my pleasant surprise, she also told me how she felt and why, I mean, she told me a lot of things about herself, lah. And that day we had the most beautiful conversation ever, grandma and grandson. Um, I heard a lot of things about her that she probably, I don't know if she shares with my relatives, my uncles and aunties, but she shared with me very much deeply. And from then on, our conversations were more real. We were all more honest with how we felt. And every time we had a conflict, we were able to address it rather than let it fester. So, what I'm trying to say here is, or try to convince all of you, lah, okay, is that conflict is not a bad thing per se. I'm sure a lot of you, this makes sense to a lot of you, right? Cognitively, we know that conflict is not necessarily a bad thing. But the truth is, we always avoid conflicts, right? We don't want conflicts because what we see is the then, like we feel lousy, we feel upset with the other person, and we don't want to have conflicts. But conflicts also creates opportunity for growth. And conflict is really what restorative practice is all about as well. Like to have this framework, to have this language to address conflict as it arises. Okay. So now that we see conflicts in a more positive light, okay, next I'd like to share, this four common responses to how people respond to conflict, right? Because since we are talking about conflict, how we react and how others react is very important, right? For us to understand more. Since Chinese New Year is around the corner, I will use maybe Chinese New Year or family gathering setting as a context so that we can understand the situation better. So the situation is as such, family gathering. Okay, someone comes back, maybe your children, your brother, and everyone is having a good time lah, right? But then someone makes a comment, okay, maybe about why you do this work, like, hey, why your marriage, why your wife like that, like, or it may be about money, like, hey, why didn't you buy this? Why didn't you pay, contribute to repair that? Stuff like that. Very simple, but it always happens, right? And I read a joke or I watched a TikTok recently about how family gatherings are the best situations for conflicts because there's everyone is there and everyone has an opinion and everyone is dying to say what they feel, right? And that's the perfect setting for conflicts to happen. So now what happens to the person who received the comment, right? There are four possible ways. Okay, let's see if any one of them feel very familiar. You have the right side, like the attacking others. Okay, the reaction may be like, you also what, like or maybe like worse, a nasty word or nasty comment, like attacking others. Or it can be on the right, attack self, right? Maybe your son, the whoever feels lousy, right? And what goes on in his mind is, yeah lah, like it's true lah. I'm useless lah, how old already, I'm still not earning as much as other people. I cannot contribute much. Yeah lah, I really am the lousiest of the family lah, right? Attacking self. But attacking self doesn't, sometimes you cannot see, right? It is what goes on inside, right? So attacking self, you have the withdrawal. Withdrawal means usually it is physically, the person will just leave the place, right? Because the tension, the discomfort, the shame is just too much to handle, and they just want to leave the physical space, right? So withdrawal. Or you can have the bottom response, which is avoidance. So this is shown when Babodo. Sometimes, like people say something and then you question if how come this person doesn't register, right? The truth is that sometimes, many a times, it's not because that the person doesn't register what's being said. It's just that they don't want to deal with it. And we call this avoidance, right? So they may change the topic, they may pretend that, like they didn't hear something. It doesn't mean that nothing is happening. It just means that they don't want to deal with it. So as I'm sharing, these common responses to how people respond to conflicts, uncomfortable situations, uh, do you find it relatable? I mean, have you seen these responses in others? And more importantly, have you seen it in yourself? Are you aware, that there are such responses? Now, the thing about why share this and why this among all the other RP concepts is because I personally find it very useful how I apply this compass of shame when on myself is that when I am feeling something, now that I have learned these four responses, I'm more aware that, oh, I'm upset, I'm angry, and I am about to say something that I may regret. So I pause, I take a deep breath, and I think, okay, Matthew, I'll react in a better way. It is possible to react in a better way. So this is how I apply it for myself. How I apply it on others is that I am more able to be um, I'm more aware that whatever response that is evident, it is just how people are coping. So when someone shouts, it doesn't mean that the person is nasty. When someone leaves the gathering, it doesn't mean that they are purposely being difficult. It just means that there's tension, there's conflict, and they don't really know how to react to it. And that's how they are reacting. So I don't blame them per se. I shift from blaming to trying to understand, why they might be reacting in the way that they are reacting. And then what can I do to help them to make things better, right? So, rewind a little. For those of you who are interested, like to find out more after tonight's session, this thing that I just introduced to you, these four responses to difficult situations, these four directions, is called the Compass of Shame by this academic called Nathanson. But too academic here, don't worry. Okay, we'll just move on. Now, I think this is the more important thing that maybe a lot of you are more interested to know more about. So, yes, there are conflicts. So, what can we do? Is there anything that can be done to make the situation better? The answer is yes. And RP again provides a framework to how we may do it. So I'm going to share with you two methods. Okay, the first method is what you can ask. Okay, now when things happen, again, bringing us back into the moment of conflict, right? When something has happened, usually there's a lot that is on our chest, like this pressure that needs to come out, right? And having someone to talk to is a very good way of relieving that pressure. But when we talk to someone who wants to talk more than we do, like I'm feeling very, like I just went through a lousy time. I just left my family gathering because I have this conflict and I want to talk about it. But I meet a friend who keeps giving me advice. And then he keeps talking and talking and talking, and I cannot talk. The chances are I feel lousier, I feel shittier, right? So instead of us giving advice or sharing how we feel, actually a better and more helpful way is to ask questions and let the other person do the talking, right? So one gentle and neutral way to get people to start talking is to ask what happened, right? And let the other person have the airtime. Um, Show the other person that you are giving the undivided attention, and it's easier for someone to share in that way. And once you gauge that, okay, the emotion is better, like less angry, less upset. The next question you can follow up with is, what have you thought about since? Okay, it's a bit. I type what have you thought about since it's on the PowerPoint slides because according to RP, that's the standard way to ask questions. But perhaps a more relational way to ask questions would be, so what are you thinking? What's on your mind now? Right? So whatever happened is in the past. Okay. So what are you thinking about now? So by asking what are you thinking about now, it helps the person process a little bit more about what has happened and be able to name how they are feeling at the point. Are they still angry? Are they still upset, or actually they've moved on already? Like after telling you what happened, they already feel better, right? So it's a very useful question to ask. What's on your mind now? And then the third question that you can ask is, so what do you think needs to happen to make things better? Again, here the answer lies with the person, not so much of us, because as the person who is not involved, right? Very often we don't really know the full story. So whatever advice that we can give, it's at that point of time really just to make ourselves feel better rather than the other person feel better. Because when we give advice, like we feel that we are helping. But tonight, what I want to challenge us to rethink is what is actually more helpful, by giving advice that may not necessarily be relevant, useful, or is just being there helping the other person process by asking gentle, neutral questions more helpful, right? I don't have a definite answer for this, but I think tonight by sharing it's just to prod our thinking in another direction and to maybe provide another tool that we can use to deal with times of conflict. So this is what we can ask, right? When someone else is having conflict, how can we help? There's also another way that we can make things better, especially so when we are the ones who are affected. So now, if we have a conflict with a family member, then how to move on, right? A lot of things that comes out of our mouth sounds wrong because of the tone, because of the wording. So how, like, is there a neutral way, is a positive way, restorative way that, like I can mend the relationships? Yes, RP also has a framework for that, and it's what we call affective statements. Okay, so um, technical jargons aside, here is an example of how it sounds like. Okay, so the structure is very simple. You share how you feel, followed by the reason for why you are feeling how you feel, and lastly, what you hope will happen in the future. So an example is, okay, I'm not going to go word for word. Okay, I'm going to try to deliver it in my own style. So if I have a conversation with my family about conflict, I probably would say, um, you know what, actually, I feel quite frustrated really recently and upset because I don't know why every time we are having these family conversations, we're having a talk, it never seems to go nicely and things always go sour. And I it may not show, but actually I feel very upset about things. I feel that we are family lah, and I do care about our relationship. And I really hope that in the future, when we speak to one another, can we really be more mindful about our tone, our choice of words, and, you know, react to each other in a better manner? Okay, so what I just demonstrated is, in a nutshell, what is shown in the slide, right? Now, let me just break down the components, okay, of the three different components. Now, why is it that we want to feel, why is it that we want to share about how we feel, right? I think when you share how you feel, it makes the other person, it opens up conversation. And this conversation doesn't start on a defensive note. Because you're sharing how you feel, and it's not you make me feel this way, right? I mean, when you hear someone say, like, hey, you make me feel this way, straight away, you go no, right? You become defensive. But by sharing how you feel, it softens the first interaction and it allows people to be more open to hearing what is actually going on, right? So this I feel is very important, right? To soften the stance. Next, you want to tell people, like why we feel the way we feel, because most of the time, actually, people don't know. I don't know how many of you have this experience of having tension. Everyone knows something is wrong, right? But no one is talking about it. No one is talking about it because no one actually knows what is going on. Everyone knows someone is upset, but no one knows, like why everyone is upset. And everyone is treading on thin ice. The situation is very tense and it's stuck there. It doesn't move on, right? But when we are able to tell others why we feel the way we feel, it actually allows the conversation to start moving, right? Everyone understands better now, like why the situation is the way it is. And maybe, like there can be some explanation, communication, and people can move on, right? And then the third thing that you want to share is what you want, like moving on. And mind you, this what we hope is not what we want, lah, like what we willfully want for our own purpose. It's really what we want for the better of the relationship. Now, when we say, I hope that in the future we can da 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 da, the other person doesn't really have to agree, right? Again, it's about communication. Everything in this set of effective question, right? The three components: why I feel the way I feel, and what can we do in the future. It all opens up rooms for communication, because when you have communication, when you have conflicts and you don't talk, you can't move on. But when you can talk, the other person can understand that, hey, like I may not agree with how you are feeling, but I can understand why this might have upset you, right? It doesn't affect me, but I can understand how it might have affected you. And now it makes more sense why you are angry, why you storm out of the room, why you are refusing to, like talk to someone, because this is very important to you, right? So again, there are two things that we can use, two language that we can speak when we experience conflict ourselves, or when other people are experiencing conflict and we want to help others. We can either ask them questions, right? The set of questions that what happened, what are you thinking now, what needs to happen in the future, and if you are the one who are experiencing conflict, how to express yourself in a more restorative way that helps to build relationships and also to mend relationships. Yeah. So that's basically it in a nutshell. And I hope that whatever that I've shared would be able to help you feel more confident, to navigate family conflicts or family situations. Okay, not necessarily conflicts, but situations in the upcoming festive season, or at least, like just to look at conflicts in a different manner. So thank you everyone for your attention.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for
Yeah.
sharing with us the theoretical and the technical aspects of what restorative language is. So, to introduce Sin Sin, this is her family. So, Sin Sin is a wife, a mother, and a grandmother. I think by Singapore standards, some of us might say this is a large family, but I'm sure there are even larger families out there. I got to know Sin Sin from the Restorative Practices workshop as well, and I believe Sin Sin has a story to tell. So hi, good evening, Sin Sin.
Hello, Chantal.
Okay, so what Sin Sin and I will do is we are going to have a dialogue. We're going to have a dialogue. So Sin Sin, having learned about restorative language, could you share with us an incident, perhaps a conflict in your family that you had experienced that you'd like to reveal to our audience tonight?
Certainly. Yes, like what Matthew shared, right? That every day we have conflicts 24/7. What more we'd say staying with a hubby who is 24/7, right? Conflict is always there. And so it is a very, very regular thing that, conversation will just blow out. For example, when we are in a car and the husband's driving, and he would forget that there's a speed limit on the stretch of road, right? And I say, look at the speedometer. It's going at 80. It's supposed to be on 60. And of course, then with that kind of advice, so to say advice, right? Of course, the driver is not too happy about it. And he will give me either the kind of tone, right? And I'll just then, okay, I get it, because this is not the first time it's happened, and it's has been happening since the day we were married, right? So from what I have discovered is that I need to learn that his style of driving, he's old enough, he's a grandpa, and he need to regulate himself, and he doesn't need me to continue to nag him with that kind of conversation. And so this is a regular thing that's happened whenever
Sinsin, I'm just curious. So
yes.
So when your husband at you, I'm sure that made you feel not so good, because you were trying to say that please drive safely. We are in the car with you, so it made you feel not so good.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you manage that?
Right. So of course the feeling now is like it used to be that high, right? But now it's kind of toned down, and the feeling is still not good. So what I'm telling myself is that it's okay. I understand that he matured enough, he's old enough to know what to do, and he doesn't need an extra voice to remind him that. And so with that, I'm able to then calm myself down to say it's okay. Whatever the consequence is okay. I can. I'm willing to accept it. Yeah. So with that, I sort of have peace with myself. At the same time, there is space between both of us. For him also to think through as well.
So it sounds more like you were regulating your own emotion too,
Yes.
to prevent yourself from reacting.
Yes.
But then again, I'm sure within you still felt that, hey, I really need him to slow down because I don't feel safe.
Yes.
But we get back to that with Matthew's help afterwards, because I think
Yes.
Matthew did say that we do need to be able to express how we feel and then give a reason because, and then I hope that. But okay, that was an interesting thing. I think many in our audience would also be involved in a husband-wife kind of conflict and conversation that's difficult.
Yes.
How, may I ask, Sinsin, if you had reacted, how would this situation have become worse if you had
Okay.
reacted?
Right. If I have reacted, he will say, "Yeah lah, my father, my mother," and then he will say, "Yeah lah, I'm at fault lah, okay lah, that's the end of the conversation. Stop." Yeah, that will always be the conversation. The end of it. I mean, there's like no way of going further, and both of us will feel very, very upset. That's for sure. Yeah.
So I guess the outcome would be he still think there's nothing wrong,
Yeah.
and you still feel bad that you're not feeling safe in a car
Yeah.
that's driven too fast, or perhaps you might even be worried that what if you get the traffic summons for speeding and then
Yes.
it impacts the family and all that.
Yes.
Okay. So that's husband and wife. How about what situation have you experienced, let's say with yourself, and maybe an adult child that
Mm.
was conflicted?
Yes. I think the recent one is not so much my son. Is my granddaughter. Mm. My granddaughter, she is this is my third grandchild. She is 12 years old this year. Yeah, and we were somewhere and having a good time. All of us were having our desserts, and so I don't know why that I went to her in front of her to try to eat her dessert. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe she invited me or I did ask permission. Yeah, and then I use a spoon and I start to play, with whatever that's in there, and she got mad at me and she said, "Nine, nine!" She really shouted at me. What are you doing? With a spoon. You use Amber's spoon to try to put all her bugs into the dessert. Because Amber was having cough early on. Not, but she has recovered. And that was something like, ooh, this granddaughter, I haven't seen her speak to me like that before. That was really, really is like, ooh, yeah. So that was my reactions like, oh, what am I supposed to say to her? I'm really very hurt. Yeah.
So as a result of your granddaughter, um, I short of saying shouting at you, but it surprised you, her reaction.
Yes.
Um, but what would you have done now that you understand about restorative language?
Mm.
Did you apply that with her?
Yes, I did. Firstly, I sort of give space for between us by not saying anything, by not reacting. And then I was just trying to think through again exactly what happened to cause her to react that way. And at the same time, I was thinking, yeah, maybe she's right, that I was not being sensitive enough to, yeah, I mean, I was just enjoying myself. I was just carefree, and so with that in mind, I just told her calmly that Amber was not sick anymore. And yeah, and I said, sorry for not doing what is not your that I'm not supposed to do. And I just kept quiet after that. Yeah. But I was not feeling good.
How is
Yeah.
your relationship with your granddaughter today? Has it
Okay.
been
Yeah.
restored? It's okay. Okay.
Yes, we are restored. Yes. I kind of told her that yeah, that was my mistake, right? But not being aware of her need. That means she want to protect herself, right? She doesn't want to catch a bug. And I said, yeah, I really am sorry for doing that. Yeah. Mm.
Okay, but perhaps I can just go back to Matthew very
Yes.
quickly. You know, Matthew, when Sinsin described her conversation with her husband,
Yes.
and both of them decided not to escalate it, but just leave things as be, would you say that they were reacting from the perspective of avoidance, not wanting to actually say how they really felt? That's the first question. And the second question was about Sinsin's scenario with the granddaughter. It sounded to me like Sinsin was attacking herself by admitting that, oh, grandma is in the wrong. I shouldn't have taken your dessert.
Yes.
How would you advise Sinsin in these two scenarios with the husband and with the granddaughter? That the better way to manage this.
Okay. I think firstly, what I want to say and what I wanted to share, I think I didn't mention about this is that when we talk about all these responses, right, avoidance, withdrawal, attacking self, it is very important to not assign a negative value to them. Everyone experiences conflicts and everyone reacts in one of the four ways or more, right? And there is nothing wrong to avoid the situation per se. And maybe in certain circumstances, it is the more advisable things to do. thing to do because, like if we were to maybe use another approach, it may turn out worse, right? So it is also not to discredit our wisdom, like on how to deal with the situation, but it's more of like what happens after that, right? After the awareness that there is this avoidance. Perhaps it's to find a time to talk to the child, the son, right? To address the issue and not to just, not address it and let it fester and not address it. So to address it, to avoid is okay at the point of time, but eventually to address it. And similarly, like for the attacking self, I think a lot of us feel that, have experienced that. But it's also to have that self-talk to tell ourselves that, hey, like that is not true. Whatever that I think of myself, that it's my fault, it's not true. It's not helpful that I continue to think like that because this would then affect my relationship with my grandchildren, my granddaughter even more along the way. If I keep having this, like very apologetic stance, right? So
Thank
is
you.
it true that it's my fault? Is it helpful that, I continue to think this way? If it's not, then, like it is self-awareness to do something differently. Yeah.
Okay, so I appreciate that number one, it's a matter of hold the tongue first, do a
Yes.
bit of analysis and not react straight away.
Yes.
And number two, to do some self-reflection to decide what would be the best way. Is it to apologize or to address the situation? But it
Yes.
depends on the situation. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
I'd like to go to a set of questions, Matthew, which perhaps we can ask, you can answer together.
Okay.
And it's about marriage and talking with the other party. So one of the questions was that one of our attendees says that she has deep thoughts, very dark, regarding wanting to end the marriage. Is it possible to discuss this in a restorative manner, or should she simply not talk? And I thought this could be related to another question, which is how to mend a relationship when one party wants to communicate but the other does not. And then another related one is if one side wants to communicate but the other side keeps reacting,
Yes.
that they're lying every single time or just try to distract the conversation. How should husband and wife in such conflicts communicate in a restorative manner?
Okay. So I will answer the question in two parts. Okay, the first part is this, there's also this restorative practice concept of relational inclusion. Now, in RP, the conflict, okay, so traditionally the conflict is seen as person A and person B, right? Husband and wife. The conflict is between the both of us, between the both of them. But in RP, there is this concept called relational inclusion. And in layman terms, it just means, are there other people that can help this conflict that we can bring into to support both of the affected parties? And this is actually quite liberating because it takes the pressure away from the person, the affected parties, to have to come up with solutions themselves. Right. So, for instance, to answer the thought about, okay, I want to end my marriage, is it possible to discuss it in a restorative manner? My suggestion or answer to that would be perhaps the first person that you speak to doesn't need to be your husband or is it or wife, right? You can find someone to have a conversation with first, and that someone can actually help you process, like what you're actually thinking about by asking those questions that were covered just now. What happened? What are your thoughts now? What do you think needs to happen? Because actually, a lot of times, when we are having a conflict, all these thoughts are like very muddled in our mind, right? Like even we ourselves, we don't really know what we are thinking, what we are feeling, and stuff like that. So the idea of relational inclusion before the actual restorative conversation, if it ever takes place, is to maybe find your allies first, like people who can support you in such a situation. So this is part A of the answer. And part B is what if the other person is not communicative, is making use of my, kindness, mocking me, stuff like that. So yes, it is a very common question that comes up in restorative practice because it takes two hands to clap, right? So what if we want to be restorative and the other person doesn't want to be restorative? I don't have a definite answer for this, but in my experience doing restorative work, I have come to understand these difficult people or difficult reactions in a different light. Um, okay, my guru lah, like the person who taught me RP is that he said if it took you 30 years to form all your bad habits, right, of hurting people, of making fun of people, of refusing to cooperate, then maybe you should also give a 30 years, like for you to relearn all these bad habits. Of course, we are not talking about 30 years, lah, it's really very long. Maybe 3 years we can relearn it. But how I look at people who are being difficult right now is that maybe they have not learned the restorative language that I have learned. In my own journey, it also took me a very, very long time to get to where I am today. And even then, like where I am today is not perfect. I'm still prone to being difficult myself. I'm still prone to all those shame responses that I shared just now. So similarly, when we deal with the other person that we deem is not being cooperative, refuse to, they are just nasty, maybe it's to take a step back and to look at them as simply not having learned the language yet.
Yes, yes.
And that
Yeah,
it can be
certainly,
learned.
yes. So
Yeah.
certainly restorative language is a new language that we all need to learn that's very
Yes,
different from
yes,
our
yes.
typical
Yeah,
Singaporean way of
yeah,
speaking. But I hear you that if there is a conflict between husband and wife,
yeah,
it is best to, number one, get some allies to hear us out first,
yes,
and perhaps to get a neutral party to be the mediator for both sides. So
yes,
okay, I'd like to go on to a next set of questions. Our participant says that she was not well treated, or he, I'm not sure. They
okay.
were not. This person, adult, was not well treated by the parents,
Mm,
and then now that they have their own children, the
mm,
the grandparent would like more time with the grandchildren, and there's some discomfort from the adult parent. How does
yes,
this adult parent begin to talk about how the elder couple was treating them
yes,
badly growing up? And I was wondering whether a similar question could be in-laws, right? That this
yes,
adult
yeah,
couple, the in-law hasn't been treating them
mm,
well, and how because the elderly couple are very traditional and they feel that the younger generation should just listen to us lah. We eat more salt than we eat rice. How how do you use
yes.
restorative practice or
Mm,
conversation to deal with
yeah.
the higher level, the more senior level?
Okay, without knowing the details of the story, I think maybe to bring back, like my own sharing when I started about how my grandparents were able to learn a new language actually, right? They never, with my parents, they didn't talk this way, right? But at their age, at 70, 80, they managed to learn. So I'm not trying to, sorry, like I don't want to sound like I am trivializing um, uh, this person's experience, but I would like to maybe just encourage that even very traditional parents, they are capable of learning. But what is important is that they also need role models. And perhaps they are not the first person to approach. Maybe their grandchildren, as what I see, if there is this good relationship, like with the grandparents and the grandchildren, right? Then the grandchildren are likely those who can influence the grandparents. So what I would do probably in this instance is to start as a parent to have those restorative interactions with my children, like begin to talk to them in a certain way and, you know, show the grandparents that, hey, like as a family unit, we are learning this new language and they'll be curious, like what is this whole thing about? And maybe, like you can get the grandchildren to slowly share with the grandparents what this whole thing is about, about listening to people, about asking questions, about, like having taking chance to talk, stuff like that. But of course,
That's
at the very basis of it is that the children must buy in lah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's not easy for the younger children, but as you
Yes.
say, we have to teach them how to
Yes.
use restorative language.
Yes.
But let's say, as an adult spouse,
Yes.
let's say I'm an adult spouse,
Mm.
how do I tell my spouse
Mm.
that my in laws have caused me hurt and I don't feel comfortable with your parents, right? So, as adult couple, how do you tell the other party that I don't like your parents? They have caused me hurt. How do I raise that?
I think, okay, RP is an approach, but RP doesn't have all the answers, right? And I think this situation calls for probably other approaches as well, like having more in-depth conversations. In fact, actually, RP does have an intervention. We call it family circles that we are unable to share today because, like given the limited time that we have. But what RP can do for situations like this, if the parties are willing, the trained restorative practice facilitator can come in to help facilitate a family circle where all the parties, all the participants, the husband, the wife, maybe even the children, right, can come together to have a very honest conversation about how they actually feel, how they have been affected, and stuff like that. And these conversations may not be able to, like, it's very difficult for the wife or the husband per se, right, to do that because in a family setting without a facilitator, the space is just different. The rules of communication, the dynamics are just very, very different. But what RP can help with is to have that structured conversation in a very safe space where we can help to facilitate all these things that needs to come out. Yeah.
Yes, yes. But short of getting like a large group together, I mean,
Yes.
just between husband and wife, I guess you have
Yes.
given us a good technique, which is to
Yes.
be honest enough to say, I feel
Yes.
hurt because
Yes.
like your parents have what. I
Yes.
hope that.
Yes.
And really that's the starting point to have that conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. Perhaps we can go to a very last question, and that
Okay.
is now we focus on children.
Yes.
So one of our participants has said that it's hard to reach out to her children. Because the children's seem to have a poor attitude. Their tone, their nonchalant attitude, body language. How does this parent deal with the child with this kind of seemingly bad attitude?
Okay. So there's this concept in RP called 80-20. Okay. So what it means is that we build relationship 80% of the time, and then when 20% of the time we need to address an issue, like for example, their behavior, their tone, it makes it more efficient, or they are more willing to listen, lah. Like when we build the relationship 80% of the time, and then 20% of the time address it. In layman terms, it just means to praise them when praise is due. I know for parents, it may be a little difficult because, it's like, what's there to praise? Whatever that they do is supposed to be done, but, like children should do this, all those kind of things. But again, like to provide another alternative viewpoint, actually, yes, even the very, very small things we can affirm, and we can use the affective statement, the same format to affirm. I feel happy that you clear the trash just now. It really shows that you care about the family, and mommy or daddy, hope that, you can continue to show this responsibility, lah.
Yes,
Right?
thank you. So
Yeah.
therefore, Matthew, what you're saying is we have to balance, as parents, we need to
Yes.
balance how we say things. There
Yes.
could be negative moments and there could be positive
Yes.
moments. And you have just reminded me that there is a course that's supported by Ministry of Social Family Development that's called Triple P. Perhaps our audience members can go and Google Triple P. It's about positive parenting. That teaches a lot of interesting tools on how parents can manage conflicted children, difficult children. It's a very good course. So perhaps to end, we are running out of time. Matthew, perhaps you can also share with us, like, how can we train ourselves to be better at restorative practice?
Okay, so for those of you who are, this is the self-koyok part already lah. Okay, so for those of you who are interested to find out more about how to build relationships, you can join our LCCS's Building Relational Capacity course. Okay, it's a 3-day course. And during the course, we would really reflect on how we have been relating with others, with ourselves, all this while, and to talk about specific tools and approaches where we can, build those relationships, not just between us, interpersonal relationships, but also in the community as a whole. And these are at one glance, things that are going to be covered in the course, including the relational inclusion concept that I mentioned just now. Yeah, how to bring everyone together in a restorative way. And I won't go through all the principles, but it's a very comprehensive course that will touch on many different aspects, right? And for those of you who are interested in the course, we are having a course run very soon. The course dates are 2nd, 9th, and 23rd of February. They are all Mondays, so it's next month. The timing every day, it's 9 to 5:30 p.m. We have a 1-hour break for lunch in between. And the location is at the Bukit Merah Community Hub, where the LCCS office is. Yeah, so for those of you who are interested, you can just maybe scan the QR code. It will bring you to a drop form. So you just fill in the drop form, and I'll be in touch with you shortly about registering for the course. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
So for our webinar attendees, if you have still not yet decided whether you want to attend this course, feel free to Google LCCS and find out more about restorative practices. You can always drop them a note to find out more. So thank you very much, Matthew and Sin. Tonight, I think it was interesting that we managed to also answer questions around grandparent and adult children as husband and wife, even grandparent with grandchildren, and parent and children. I think it's been a wonderful discussion as we focus on the intergenerational family and how we can strengthen relationships through the way we talk, through the way we speak, and through how we express our feelings to each other. So it leaves me now to again thank Matthew and Sinsin. For our audience members, if you'd like to get in touch or stay connected to Grander Together, because we are going to conduct these apparently webinars almost every month, if you could scan this QR code and you can decide how you want to connect, either by Telegram, WhatsApp, or YouTube channels, that's also possible. And just also let our audience members know that after today, we will be uploading a recording of this webinar onto YouTube, and we'll announce it to you so that you can share it with your friends and family members who may not have been able to attend tonight. So at the close of this webinar, attendees will also be receiving a Zoom notification to provide your feedback, and we really appreciate our audience members for giving us Grander Together a feedback and to maybe suggest some other topics that you'd like us to address. So thank you very much, Matthew and Sinsin, and thank you to our audience members. Good night and have a great
Thank
rest
you, everyone.
of the week.
Good night.